Welcome, everyone. I'm excited. This is Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. And today I have on an incredible story, heartfelt, inspiring. When I first heard it, it did bring me to tears. And I want you all to hear this. Chad Mierau, did I say it right?
You're close. Mierau, Chad Mierau.
Chad Mierau is my guest today, and that's okay. We like to correct on this podcast. We know it's live and we're going. Hey, welcome to the show, Chad.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm excited. I know we met 3 or 4 weeks ago. I heard your story. Let's start with your story back in the day and what happened and what it did for you.
Absolutely. So I grew up on a farm, and I grew up in a family where we worked hard. And through my high school years, I began to develop a business sense and decided that's what I wanted to do was get into some businesses in my 20s and 30s, and eventually that's where I landed. But more importantly, 7 years ago, my life was flipped completely upside down. January 3rd, 2016, I got that dreaded phone call that nobody ever wants to get at 3 o'clock in the morning. And on the other end of the line was a police officer who I knew. He was from my hometown. And he said, "Listen, man, where are you at? I'd like to come see you. I got some bad news to share with you." And of course, at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's never a good thing, ever. And I said, "Listen, Dave, it's shoot straight with me. What's going on?" And he said, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but your sister and your brother-in-law were in a car accident, and they were both killed." And man, that shook me to the core, dropped me to the ground. I'm on my knees with my phone barely in my hands and sweating profusely instantly, just shocked. I can't even believe the words that are coming out of his mouth. And he says, "I'd like to send somebody over there to pick you up and help you out." And I said, "No, it's all good. Just like, what happened to the kids? Are the kids with mom and dad?" And he said, I don't really want to share that with you right now." And I said, "Dave, I can handle it. Tell me what's going on." And he said, "Yeah, your niece and nephew were both in the car with their mom and dad, and it doesn't look good for either one." And of course, that shook me. The kids are 5 and 2. My little niece McGuire, or my little niece Cameron, and my nephew McGuire, and I was as close to those kids as my own kids. And to hear that all four were in the vehicle and things don't look good, completely tore me up inside instantly. So from there, it was heading across the city to go to the hospital. It was in Saskatoon, and we headed over to RUH and up to the PICU unit. And when I walked into the PICU in the middle of the night, I don't even remember, 4 o'clock in the morning, somewhere in there, and saw my little nephew lifeless in my brother-in-law's. His parents were there, and they were comforting him, holding him, and walking into this scene, if you can imagine, with a little 2-year-old in the corner of a room in a hospital. And I remember looking at him thinking, he's not moving. He's not. His toes aren't moving. He's not kicking. His arms aren't flailing. He's 2. He's usually running. He's usually going and moving around. So I knew that things weren't good, and that's another kick to the right square in the forehead. I was shocked to see him lifeless and not moving, and I got a turn to hold him shortly after I got there, and I suspect that the people at the hospital were doing the best to accommodate the few family members that were there, allowing us to hold him and allowing us to just to be in his presence and in his space. And looking back on that, I'm pretty honored to have that time. But holding a little guy that's going blue and not moving, getting cold, and wrapping him in blankets. There's no feeling other than like there's just no way to describe it. There's nowhere
Yeah.
to put it into words. Just completely heartbroken. We're our family members and people coming 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 in the morning, six. I held the little guy for hours.
Wow.
Um, I think probably 4 hours, 5 hours. Others didn't really want to. I was really comfortable with it. He was my little guy. January 3rd, it was a week after Christmas. I just bought him mini sticks, and he's running around like a 2-year-old in our house. And he would say, "Play hockey, Uncle." And as a 2-year-old, right? Pay hockey, Uncle.
Hmm.
Pay hockey.
Yeah.
So just having those things flashing through my mind while I'm holding the little guy, and um, it's just a really hard thing to navigate through. And from there, we learned that my 5-year-old niece was across the hallway, and we had an opportunity to go see her in her room. And again, slapped square in the face walking through the door and seeing her hooked up to every machine. Um, I'm not familiar with hospitals or all the
Yeah.
terminology, but watching movies on TV and every monitor, all the little sticky things all over her body, and there's little beeps going everywhere. And same thing, she's just lifeless in the bed with blankets on her. And we learned that they suspected she was brain dead, and that they needed to confirm with some tests. And all the machines were basically keeping her body going, keeping her lungs going, her heart, everything. And same thing, 5-year-old that typically is all energy and just a bundle of joy and jumping around and grab my hand, grab Uncle's hand, and go show me something and show me her Barbies and different things like that. And to just see her in a hospital bed with a tube in her mouth and obvious head trauma, um, images that I just never they just don't go out of my mind. They're still
Yeah.
there. They're etched there. And the doctors indicated that they were going to do these tests, and a lot of the family was there by then. I would say middle of the next day by the time this was happening, and essentially the test is they unhook everything and see how our body responds. And grandmas and grandpas were out in the hallway, and other family members are out there. There's a couple of us stayed in the room, and I stayed there and held her hand, um, just to be in the same space and comfort her in any way I could. Trying to make sense of it in my mind. Well, there's a team of doctors in the room, and of course when they did the test, they did in fact confirm she was brain damaged and brain dead. Essentially meaning that without machines, her body's lifeless and not going to do anything. So at that point, we, as a family, had some discussion around uh, organ donation
Yeah.
and tissue donation, things of that nature. And let me tell you, with a 5-year-old that's normally full of energy and just a bundle of joy, to have um, 12 or 14 or 15 of us in a small room in 90 seconds decide unanimously that this has got to happen. If somebody else can have that energy and that zest for life that she did, um, it was an overwhelming decision of yes, of course we would do that. So in the course of the next day and a half, my timing's off on a lot of this, Steve.
Yeah,
To be
I could
truthful,
completely understand. Yeah.
the mind's just a fog, and our hearts are breaking, and we're just in shock. Even 7 years ago, just sitting here talking about it's tough to hold
Emotional.
back the
Yep.
tears.
Take your time. I got to say, that's the true serving, giving other people life, her energy. Praise
Oh
the
my
Lord for
gosh.
that, Chad.
Yeah.
Right or wrong decision, something good came about of it. And
Yeah.
if you could talk to her today, I'm sure she'd be pretty happy about that. And I'm sure you are talking to her in different ways.
Absolutely, my friend. Yeah.
And so you lost all your family members, if I remember correct.
Yeah. So my sister Shanda and my brother-in-law Jordan were deceased on site, and we learned in the first day or so. Again, it could have been hours, could have been half a day. I'm not
Mhm.
exactly sure, but we learned from the officer that was first on scene that it was in fact a drunk driver that ran right through a stop sign and T-boned my family's car, and she she was doing about 120 kilometers an hour,
Mm.
and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Um, my brother-in-law was driving, and they had just spent the evening with real good friends of theirs, about a half an hour away from where they live, and just heading home for the night. And we learned that when the woman hit my family, she was literally walked out of her vehicle with a scratch or two, and got out of her vehicle and was looking for her cell phone, and she was under the impression that somebody had hit her, and she was trying to navigate through what had just happened and what was going on in her world. So hearing the officer who was first on scene, he literally saw the lights of the cars just up the road from where he happened to be. He was on scene, um, 90 seconds to two
Wow.
minutes later, kind of thing. He
Mm-hmm.
was literally right there, him and his partner. So him sharing firsthand what he came up upon, um, of course, he was very good with the words he used to share with us what he came up to, and the situation that unfolded in front of him. And I'll never forget him sharing. Um, he was inside the car and holding my nephew's little hand, because when they did their initial assessment of four bodies in a vehicle, and he thought that little McGuire was the one that had maybe the best chance of maybe making it.
Right.
So he held McGuire's little hand, and I have these images in my mind of a police officer reaching into a wreckage with my nephew's little hand wrapped around his finger, and of course he's lifeless and probably not doing that, but that's what my thoughts are, and that's where
Mm-hmm.
my mind goes. Um, but yeah, just learning that somebody was so drunk that they went through a stop sign, ran across a couple of rumble strips, even up to the stop sign, and right through it, and exact perfect timing to hit, you know. one of very few vehicles out on the road at 1 a.m. And it just a whole room full of family members that are just in shock
Yeah.
and just trying to absorb what's actually happening and the words that are being said, and crying and holding each other and hugging and just disbelief. And we've all heard stories where things of this nature happen, but until it happens to you, you really don't understand it. You don't really get it.
Yeah.
So from there, it was just trying to make sense of it, trying to put one foot in front of the other, 1 minute at a time, and understanding that we needed to let family members know, extended family members. And I made a lot of phone calls within a day and a half. And I'll tell you, um, that was excruciating. Picking up the phone and calling cousins and uncles and aunts and friends, and just sharing that a family of four is gone. Um, just people's response on the other end of the line. Shock and people screaming, and I got everything that day. I really
Yeah.
did. Um, it's hard phoning your family members and saying, "Hey, listen, some of our favorite people are no longer with us,"
Right.
and
Right.
sharing a little bit about what happened. Um, just excruciating couple of days. It's it's hard to put into words. It really is.
Yeah, and I can see it in your face, and people that can see this will see it, and I can feel it and feel it in your words. But one thing about you, Chad, now that I know the full story, because I've got part of it, is, and I want people in this audience to listen to this, what Chad did with this tragedy, and it's a catastrophic tragedy. You're out there helping others, aren't you? And
Absolutely.
how are you doing that?
So the first year, there's an incredible amount of pain. Getting rid of the house contents. What do we do with a home where there's nobody left to go back to it? What do we do with the groceries that are in the fridge? Like all of that. What happens with insurances and benefits and bank accounts, all of that kind of stuff. So navigating through that for the first year, and then after all of that's done, there's a bit of a you take a breath and sort of catch up with, okay, all the things are looked after as far as their belongings, and then you start to look within and start to figure out how to heal, how to grieve. Because I didn't do that for the first quite a few months, to be honest.
You're
It's
busy.
survival.
Yeah,
It's
it's
survival.
survival. Yeah.
So I would say on year two, um, 2018, I started to do some personal development. Uh, I started taking some courses. I started to study. I started to learn what's happening to me and what's going on with me. And in doing that, I started to share my story a little bit. And I started to open up in a room of 100 people or 500 people or even 1,000 people, and just grabbing a mic and sharing a little bit about what I've shared with you now. And what I realized is how quickly people connected to me being open about it, and people coming up to me and saying, listen, I had something happen to me 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 years ago, and I've kind of been stuck, and they didn't know how to carry on or move forward. But based on what you just shared in 90 seconds, I feel like I have a few tools to work with when I get home. And people are sharing their stories with me, and emotional wrecks. They're crying as they're saying, thank you for sharing. And that sat with me for a little while, and that kind of, it stirred something up in me,
Hmm.
and it made me think, okay, if I'm really open and keep sharing like I have been, and more people are connecting to it, and more people are reaching out, um, I need to get this in a book. I need to I need to share it on a bigger stage. I need to mentor people, coach people. I just had these feelings and these thoughts coming to me, like, there's a bigger way for me to serve others, and a way for me to have a bigger reach rather than just a room of 50 people or 100 people or 500 people. And I was at a Bob Proctor event, actually, and part of that event was to write down a goal on a piece of paper, a big piece of paper that we hung on a wall. And I never even gave it any thought. It just came out of me and onto paper. I was the first one to have it written down out of a room full of people.
Right.
And I wrote on that paper, write a book about drinking and driving and about my story, in hopes that it helps other people, in honor of my family. And before I left that course, there was another gentleman in the room who was a new author a couple of years previous. And he said, if that's what you want to do, I can help you. So within the next 24 hours, we had a plan in place of how we we're going
Wow.
to make this happen. And that was in the fall of 19 when we started putting these plans together. And I started putting it on paper. Uh, by that I mean on my computer, because
Yeah.
things are different nowadays.
Right.
So I had a writing coach, and I learned very quickly that just because I was the guy in high school that had a hard time writing an essay and a hard time getting a 60, I learned very quickly that my writing coach said that I'm a natural at writing, and I'm a natural at storytelling. And I thought, wow, isn't that remarkable? I was the guy in high school that had a hard time in English class. Um, so it was kind of empowering in a way
Yeah.
to keep moving forward with the project. And into the spring of 2020, I essentially had everything, the rough draft put together. And then business kept me busy. I run a road repair business in the summertime. So once the snow was gone, I focused on running my business.
Yeah.
And also, I, I felt the need to put it down for a bit. It's very heavy. When I wrote my book, I was the guy in the corner of the room with a hoodie over my face in the dark, printing, like typing on my computer with tears dripping on my keyboard. That's where I was at when I did it. Um, I knew to have any value in those pages, I needed to be at that stage, and basically reliving it as I was telling it.
Hmm.
So it was important for me to put it down for a bit to make sure I was okay. Because at the end of the day, if I'm not okay, how can I really serve others? Um, so then in the fall of 2020, when the snow started flying, I'm having these thoughts of picking it up and getting it across the finish line. And I did that very thing. By the end of the year in 2020, it was off to the editing team, and I can't remember how many times we went through the
Oh,
editing
God.
process, but probably 5, 6 times.
Hmm.
And we put it together and finalized everything. I got some feedback on social media as far as cover and layout, and started sharing the whole project more openly on social media. So that allowed me to have people connecting to it, and having some pre-sales. And the cool thing with that is I had so many people reaching out, sharing their experiences around tragedies and traumas, their experiences with different things that have happened in their life that sort of
Right.
have them hung up or stuck. Everybody's verbiage is a little bit different on that, but just really people being super open with things that are going on in their lives, and that opened up a whole realm for me in that I became comfortable having uncomfortable conversations with folks. I became good at connecting with
Right.
people on a deeper level, and really learning and understanding that I enjoyed going into those conversations. I'm to the point nowadays where I really could care less about a surface conversation. I'm more about how can we really get into this and what's going on. And when people give you the I'm doing fine answer, I'll be the guy that likes to dive into that and say, well, what makes you say fine? What's really going on?
Oh, yeah. Are you really fine? Yep.
Yeah, are you really fine? Exactly. Um, so yeah, we got the book across the finish line and printed it in July of 2021. So about 18 months ago,
Mhm.
and part of just before the print happened, part of me was a bit anxious in that I'm truly exposing myself fully for the world to see. And I thought for a little while, a few weeks, in that, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to go out there? And then I thought, if I can help one person, or a handful of people, um, it's 100% worth it. So we pushed forward and we did it. And I had good people around me. I had my sweetheart uh, being my biggest cheerleader along the way,
Yeah.
and just encouraging me, saying you got a really good book. You're going to help some people, because we're our biggest critic. We always are,
Always.
right?
Yeah. Always.
So we, in the last 18 months or so, having approximately 13 or 1400 copies floating around out there. Um, I'll tell you, the feedback has been nothing short of amazing,
That's
and
great.
having people really reach out to me and sharing from the deepest depths of their souls and their broken hearts, their healing hearts, their healed hearts, whatever the case might be. It's just really opened up some amazing conversations with hundreds of people,
Hmm.
and it's also opened me up even further. It's allowed me to um, share in rooms where I'm invited to speak. I've been in a couple of schools. Last week, I spoke to a library / high school students, and I have another one coming up in February. And I'm filming a TV show next week here in
Nice.
Saskatchewan. It's in my opinion, especially with COVID, what's been happening in the world in the last couple or 3 years. There's so many people that are really looking for that human connection, that heartfelt human touch, human
Yeah.
connection. And the more I keep talking about what's happened in my family, um, the more I feel like I'm connecting with people on such a deep level, and helping others understand what kind of an anguish, how hard it has been for my family to go through the things we've been through.
Yeah.
So it's kind of two parts, right? Where I'm working towards prevention, so other families don't have to go through what I'm going through, and also the family of the drunk driver, what they've been through,
Yeah. True.
because her kids, I'll tell you, her kids went through some terrible things in those first few months. Um, the hatred, the people that are just condemning them and throwing swords at them. They didn't do anything wrong. It's their mom.
Yeah.
And I share that in my book because I've met the drunk driver's family, and sharing what they've went through and how it affected them, and what was it like learning in the first hours that mom's in prison or behind bars, and that mom killed some people. What's it like to hear that and to absorb that? Um, and it's been a remarkable experience to talk to them and to truly
Yeah.
understand them. Her son and I talk at times, nearly every day. Once in a while, it'll
Wow.
go for a week or two in between where we don't, but we've become really close, and just being open with each other and heart centered with each other and loving with each other, and even that piece, explaining that to somebody from the outside that doesn't know the story, and they
Yeah.
say, you talk to who? And it, it's a
It's it.
freeing.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you say that. I looked at it completely. I'm looking at it like that's really serving. Holy mackerel! That you open yourself, you open your heart. You said it. It was heart centric, which leads to love, and he's open. The son to you feeling all this anguish to be able to talk to you. I could go on all day. I love hearing the story, and I'm not. I'm laughing, and it's not laughing of joyful, but it's laughing of how you've turned this around and the legacy you've left that family, your family. Their deaths have led to helping others and doing business with a servant's heart. You could say doing personal with a servant's heart. You've done that. What's the name of the book before we forget, before we close out? Can you tell them the name of the book?
Surviving the Crash.
Surviving the Crash. Um, do you have a business around this, or are you just out speaking just from a heart centric, like you said earlier, to help others?
That's um that's a very good question. It's all in the process right
Okay.
now. So when I printed the book, launched the book,
Yeah.
it's sort of been a transition for me out of a business that I no longer want to do, and into truly how can I serve and help other people. And I'm starting to public speak a little more, starting to take some coaching courses. I have coached a few folks, a handful of people in the last 2 or 3 years, and really loved it. And that solidified for me that that's the future I'd like to create for myself, is helping and serving folks one on one
Yeah.
or even in group settings. Even the possibility of a course or something coming. It's all unfolding. I'm growing. I'm still healing. I feel whole again. I feel healthy.
Great. Great.
It has taken 7 years to get to this, but I will say I feel better now than I ever have, and I'm really truly ready to put myself out there in big ways to really go after it
Yeah.
and help as many people as I can.
No, and I say that because I want the audience to reach out to you, and I'll have them. Please reach out to him if he's coaching, whether it's financial, for finances or not. If there's a cost, he'll tell you about it. But as you can see, if you've got a group of people that you want him to talk to, that's why I want him on you. That's why I want you on the show, because this is an incredible message. It's so. I'm trying not to cry. I've not gone through what you've gone through, but it helps you to look at yourself a little differently. That look, you're on the other end of this. You've come through it. I think you said it earlier, and look where you are today. Yeah, you got emotional, and that's human nature. But major kudos, major my heart to yours that you're doing it. And I know behind that heart is the family spurring you along, motivating you, being on here, and of course, I want to help anyone in the audience. Again, I'm going to say his show notes. All his information is going to be there. Again, we could talk all day, but this is a true servant. If you're a Lord, God-fearing person like I am, this is an angel that's come about to change people's lives with a very horrific, tragedy tragedy and helping to let others grow, live a better life. I want to thank you, Chad. I appreciate your transparency. Appreciate you being open. I do want you to leave the audience with. You've probably got a lot of tips, and I want them to reach out to you to learn more. But what's one tip today that you can leave them with to help them in their life and be better?
For me, it's all about being kind and serving with a heart. All too often, I find that people are quick to have an opinion and judge rather than really absorbing what somebody's trying to say, or the energy that they're giving off, because we never know what somebody else is going through. We never know what kind of hardships somebody's got sitting on their shoulders, because I've been there, you know. And if we can treat everybody with kindness and encourage one another and lift each other up, um, to me that's a win-win situation all the way around. 1 plus 1 is always 3.